I was almost arrested when I was.
Okay. This interview is about to take a very different turn,
Yeah.
guys. Hi, everybody. Today, I am interviewing one of the most talented college YouTubers I have ever seen in a while. She is an influencer. Love that word. She is a musician, a visual storyteller, and definitely talks a lot about mental health and very important issues, which I feel like nobody in our space is really discussing. I am talking today with Harvard graduate from the batch of 2020, Avanti Nagral. Avanti, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody who is here today?
Oh my gosh, sure. Firstly, Shaurya, thank you so much for having me here. This is awesome. And
Always.
I kid you not, I have received so many requests being like, can you and Shaurya please collab? So I'm so
Sure.
happy we're making this happen.
Yes, I'm so excited as well. Oh,
And to everybody who is part of Shaurya's family, I must say my name is Avanti. And, Shaurya, you gave a wonderful introduction and very kind words. So thank you. I guess the
deserved
only thing
words.
No, I guess the only thing I would add is if you're curious, since many of you are probably interested in applying abroad, I studied psychology and global health at Harvard and graduated with a BA in that space. And I was also pursuing a dual degree with the Berklee College of Music, which I'm super happy to talk about as well. Um, and I am currently also a full-time artist. So if you have any questions about that space, super happy to answer.
That is perfect. So, Avanti, I wanted today's entire discussion to really be on the biggest questions that college applicants face going into the process, as well as just understanding what a Harvard degree is like, what a Harvard experience is like. So, before we get into all of that, I really wanted to do a rapid fire segment with you just so that people can understand you a little better. For all of you who don't know, Avanti also has a YouTube channel. You can check the link out in the description where she talks a lot about everything, super interesting stuff. But yeah, just a little bit about you. So, Avanti, first things first, what are three words you would use to describe yourself?
Whew, I feel like I'm in an interview now, but it's just great practice for all of you watching, so it's great.
We've achieved formality and structure.
Let's see. Ambitious, creative, and try to be compassionate.
What is something new you started doing during quarantine and lockdown?
YouTube, actually. I used to obviously post more music content on YouTube, but I started becoming a creator, if you will, during lockdown.
What is the biggest fear you have, Avanti?
Um, of stagnancy. To me, growth is really important no matter what I do,
Mhm.
personal, professional, mental. And I don't ever want to be in a position where I'm stagnant or super comfortable.
That's so true. And like, I definitely share that feeling. What is one hobby you hope you never stop keeping up with?
Um, well, the thing is, as a creative professional, everything that I do that would be considered a hobby is actually important for me professionally. Like
True.
dancing is one part of my profession and all of these other things. So I hope I never, I guess the way I'd answer this is that I hope I never stop finding new ways to deepen my craft.
Right. That's so true, and definitely an answer I would expect from you. Thought through deep,
Right.
applies to everything in life. Where do you see yourself in 1 year, Avanti?
Hopefully on a plane because I haven't been on a plane in a year. Um,
Love
but
turbulence.
no, I hope to be able to travel more in a year and be able to actually meet people from the incredible community that we have, perform shows, meet people and be more offline, let's put it that way.
That's great, and I definitely share the exact same goal. Hopefully in my gap year, towards the end, I can be able to travel. Avanti, what is, as the last question for this, what is one thing that Harvard students were most surprised to hear about you when you first met them?
That I was almost arrested when I was
Okay. This interview is about to take a very different turn,
yeah.
guys.
When just before coming to Harvard. No, it's more tame than you think. I did a lot of professional theater when I was in school as well. And during my gap year, I also took a gap year. I did a show that we did all across India. And long story short, there were a lot of people who opposed the staging of the show for semi-religious reasons, but they filed an FIR against us, threatened to imprison all of us, like sent warrants to our homes. It was wild. I actually have a video about this if anyone's interested, but yeah.
That's
So
so
I would say
scary.
that was definitely the most surprising thing.
Dude, now finally getting into probably what kids would really love to hear. I think the biggest question I've had as a college applicant, and tons of kids have this, is that, to get into an institution like Harvard, you do have to have achieved some amount of impact in something and some degree of excellence, whatever that thing is. And we both agree on that. It can literally be anything. And the biggest thing both of us say on our channels is, try, in the best case, it should be something you love. It's something that you really want to do because you're going to be doing this for the next 4 years of your life. How do you suggest that people try and find that 1, 2, 3 things that they really, really like and want to then take it to the next level?
I think people always assume, especially when they've grown up in the Indian education system where we don't value extracurriculars as much, that they have to do some specific thing. But what I truly believe is we all do something outside of school,
Right.
no matter what it is, even if that's spending time with your grandma, right? Whatever it is, you do something outside of school. And so I would say the first starting point is figure out everything you've ever done till now. You may be 13, 14, 17, it doesn't matter. Write down every single thing you've ever done. And it can be something you've achieved something in, it can be something that just makes you happy. Don't put any special value or importance on, an award you won, for example. Just write down everything you've done, and you'll start to notice a pattern. You'll start to notice a common thread among things. And you may not know what that is at the moment, but you may think of that. I'll give you a small example, right? Let's say somebody has done, I don't know, debates, and they have like, I don't know, family arguments at home, so something of that nature, right? Clearly there's a thread there. And I don't necessarily mean your passion is argumentation, but maybe there's something about talking about something or building up something that you enjoy. Maybe you enjoy the public speaking aspect of it, or maybe you enjoy the writing aspect of it. I think it deserves time and attention to really deep dive and delve into what that is. Now, of course, there are people who are not fortunate enough to have as much exposure to things beyond their household, or their school doesn't have opportunities. So, I would really recommend, if you're a parent watching this, expose your children to as many things as you can within your resources, because you never know what interests them and you never know what that will do for them, whether just for their own mental health and well-being or for college. And if you're a kid, make sure that as you're exploring things, you're truly doing it because you enjoy it and not, as Shaurya said, because everybody else is doing it. I find too many people being like, XYZ person got in because they did whatever, and so I must do the same thing. Like, if you just look at me and say, oh, because Avanti did music, I must do music, or because Shaurya started this organization, I must do that. That's not going to work for you, because that may not be what you are truly best at and what you can show to the world,
And I think that's extremely true in the sense that, like, finding a common link in what it is that interests you about something is such a valuable exercise to have. Like, for example, if you like automobiles, you like planes, you like phones, it's very possible that what you notice about it might just be design. And then you're like, okay, I'm interested in design. And the thing is, today we live in a world where you can get exposed to all of these different things just through YouTube. Like, what are the videos you're consuming? What are, like, on Instagram, is there something that catches your eye? Like, for example, if I look at my Instagram, I'll have, what Instagram has, which is just TikToks. But at the end of the day, there'll be like this entire thread of just filmmaking and directors and editing styles, because I know that when I consume that content, Instagram has also realized I stay on those videos for a lot longer than other pieces. So I think that, taking advantage of social media platforms to try and understand what information you like consuming the most is also definitely a very helpful exercise. And another mindset I feel that people have is that you have to achieve mastery in something and you have to become the best at something. And I think that because of that, even parents will funnel their kid down just one path and see that, okay, you keep doing this for 6 years, you're going to become the best at it, without necessarily thinking about whether that's something they want to be the best at. And, just to give a small example, I'm reading this book right now called Range by David Epstein. And one of the most interesting things that the book says, that if you look at some of the top performing athletes today, you look at Roger Federer, for example, he sampled 11 to 12 different sports till the age of 13 and 14 until he narrowed down on tennis, because having exposure to those many things really develops your skill sets in a few different things and seeds the potential for you, so that when you eventually identify something, you can then become a lot better at it. So I think having that kind of exposure is very important. And even if it's not selecting something, at least eliminate things. Say that, okay, I definitely know I might not be interested in computer science or coding, because I realize that as well. Very contrary to being the typical Indian applicant to Stanford.
No, it's equally important to know what you don't like, and the only way you're going to know that is exposure, right? As much as it's possible. Again, I'm saying this, and I know you're saying this coming from a place that we know that not everybody has the ability to have that exposure. But the difference is, our generation has the ability to be exposed through information and social media, and like you very rightly said, what you're consuming. So totally on point.
Definitely. And I think if you're a college applicant, the next eventual stage, throughout your life, you're identifying this. The next important inflection point becomes, okay, how can I make a difference in this? And how can I really take this to the next level? Like, what's changing from being a girl who bakes at home to creating a mini business and selling cakes, to eventually making a cookbook, perhaps, to having a podcast on cooking? How do you really try and take things to the next level? So from your personal experience, once you identified a few of your passions, what did you really do to make sure that whenever someone reads about it, they know you're probably one of the best in this field, or you've really taken it up a notch and taken initiative at the end of the day?
Yeah, no, that is so true. This idea of taking something to the next level, both for college and just for yourself, I think is really important. For me, musically, right, that meant I learn music, I enjoy it, I perform at all these opportunities in school. How do I take that outside of school? What can I do outside of school beyond just the craft, right? So that meant figuring out ways to perform on stages, because I truly wanted to and enjoyed doing that. I found a love for theater as well and started doing that professionally. Like, I would do professional shows on the weekends sometimes when I was in school. And it meant developing that. But I always had this fire in me to figure out ways to make impact no matter what I was doing, right? There's one mindset that you grow wealth or you grow resources or whatever, and then you can make an impact, which certainly you can. But I believe that both can exist alongside as well. So for me, another thread that was really important to me, all my grandparents were doctors, so I was exposed to the medical sciences very early on. And I personally have had a lot of health issues in my lifetime. And for me, I saw the fact that I had easy access to healthcare when many don't. So a lot of my purpose was driven from whether it was in health, physically or mentally, or, whether it was in terms of equity generally. How do you balance that? And how do you create opportunities and resources? And I knew for myself as a young person, the easiest people to impact would be people like myself, right? And so I went deep dive into how can I do stuff with my own peers or for my own peers that can make a difference. So I think, I'd always done things in this space. I was really interested in organ donation, for example. And the reason that came about was not planned. It was literally, I did Model UN in high school. One of the topics at our forum was human trafficking and organ trafficking. And when I started learning about the Black organ trade, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Let me look at India's numbers. I was representing Spain or something. And I was like, wait, this does not match up. So then I started, deep diving a little bit more. I tried to access people. And you'd be so surprised if you're interested about literally anything in the world, you writing an honest email or doing a bit of research and making a plea to anybody, you'll be surprised the amount of information you find, or the amount of people who genuinely want to help young people make a difference in this world. I know Shaurya, you talk a lot about the importance of mentorship as well. And for me, I found that through my life. So whether it was this, then I was really interested in how do you create skills that don't require you to be older, or a medical professional. And so for me, that manifested in CPR and first aid.
Mm-hmm.
And again, super random. I was at the doctor's office for a visit, and they were doing a CPR training session. And I thought it was really cool. So I talked to the doctor. I'm like, hey, can I learn? They're like, I guess not. And so I learned how to do it, thought it was really cool and easy. And so we ran programs at a lot of schools in Mumbai. And the way I kind of merged my two very core passions together was I, did a bunch of these campaigns. I was also performing as a musician. I needed money to do some of these campaigns because we needed resources. I was like, okay, I can ask my parents, find somebody else who might, want to support it. Or guess what? I'm starting to earn money from my music. Can I seed fund all of this with that? And so to me, that was like a very fulfilling way to connect the two. And so, it really was a case of me looking back at what mattered in my life throughout
Right.
and seeing how I could make an impact in that way.
Yeah, that's so true. I think, just like a few key takeaways that really stood out to me. I think one, community is very strong, getting other people involved as well. I think, especially when you were doing your organ donation drive, you reached out to your friends, you reached out to, surrounding schools. I think gathering people and creating a movement that's bigger than yourself is one of the most impressive things, in my opinion. And then one step before that is initiative, taking that initiative, stepping outside your comfort zone and doing something that might not be expected of you as a 17 or 16-year-old, or like even for that doctor for matters was like, okay, I don't see why not. Like, it's not something, everybody would be asking. And because of that, step three, which is, mentorship and, relationships with people in the industry, those are created because of a genuine interest in their field. And you'd be surprised how many 16-year-olds are asking for organ donation to an individual in a particular health institution. So I think they're very receptive of it because they want, more and more young people getting involved in a cause that that they've been doing for so long and are really passionate about.
100%. And what was interesting to me, the organ stuff I actually did when I was 13 or 14. And I remember contacting an organization in the US and then contacting an organization in India. And the people in the US were very receptive. The people in India were like, tu bachchi hai,
Yeah.
And I remember feeling so disheartened, but I was like, why should I let my age stop me? You
Right.
know? And that actually gave me a little bit more fuel. And one of my favorite quotes, I don't know who it's attributed to, is don't let anybody tell you you're too young to do something, because a baby shark is still a insert expletive shark.
Mhm.
To me,
Right.
I love that, right? Because it doesn't matter the age you are.
Mhm.
And that's across the spectrum, right? If you are, say, you're not necessarily a young person right now, you're later on in your life and thinking about things, age shouldn't define what you do. You shouldn't regret not doing something younger or older or whatever that might be. But
Mhm.
if you're somebody young and watching this and knows that you have the world at your fingertips and these opportunities, I would say just go for it. And like you said, developing those mentorship relationships is so important, whether that's with your teachers in school, whether that's with people outside of school, whether that's even with your parents, right? A lot of people are like, oh, they're our parents, but sometimes your parents are in industries that are similar to what you're interested in. You might learn something.
Yeah. I think, even the skill of trying to create relationships at a young age, that's something that's going to help you throughout life. Because you'd be surprised how many like 18-year-olds who haven't done that don't know how to write an email or are not so sure how they can write a persuasive and, convincing email. And really lightly touching upon like cold mails, because I feel like a lot of people do talk about this. How do you actually make those relationships? I think for me, it's always been a lock and key effect where you have something to offer and they have something to offer as well. And you've researched both sides. You know how you could provide value to them and they can provide value to you. And I think it's very important in your mails to be very clear what you expect from someone. And it's not like a long-term commitment because people just don't have the time for that these days. If all you're asking for is a 10-minute conversation or a book recommendation or a research paper recommendation, anything that gets them to just answer, that you've got the hook. Even to explain very simply how Instagram works, if someone DMs you and they don't follow you, it goes in a DM request pile. And if it's a very small question and I answer it, that's suddenly in my general pile, which is a list of people I talk to. So getting your foot in the door is surprisingly really, really effective to continue asking questions and really build your relationship from there. So ask small, show your value, show your interest, show how they can help you, and hopefully you should get your foot in the door.
I mean, I think that's so true. And I would say if you are struggling for what to ask for, the easiest thing you can ask for in a meaningful way, also showing value, is advice. Because everybody loves to give advice and share that. But
Mhm.
don't just write an email saying, "Hi, X person, can you give me advice?" Be
Right.
very specific in your ask. And I found that, especially as a young person, when you ask for advice to somebody, more often than not, they are more than willing to help you out.
Definitely. I think the last big question I wanted to ask you, is that this interview is very different because you've gone through Harvard. You've got the Harvard experience, the Harvard education. You're 4 years older than me, or 5 years if you've taken the gap year into account. Do you feel that the Harvard experience was worth it? Because there's so much that India or Southeast Asian countries just offer to Harvard as this, pillar of education. How has that experience been for you now that you've gone through it? Did you feel you were prepared for it? Was it overwhelming at times? Like how has all of that just been?
It's definitely been interesting. It's funny because fairly recently I just put out a video called The Truth About Harvard, where,
Hmm.
having gone through it, I can look at the pros and the cons. And I would say, the pros of everything that you expect in terms of resources, in terms of the diversity of peers, professors, the environment you're in is all true and more than you can even imagine. And for that, I am so grateful. I've made friends from different countries, different backgrounds. I have learned from thought leaders and professors that I never could have imagined, learning from. And when I say learned, of course, in the classroom, but also outside the classroom.
Right.
And that brings me to not necessarily a con, but if you are preparing to go to college, regardless of where in the world you are, make sure that you go into it eyes wide open, where you are truly taking advantage of what is being offered to you. A lot of people go in and they say, okay, now I'm in a chill zone in my life. I just need to take classes and chill. That's one approach, right? Or the other approach is it's a little bit more difficult in their school life. And so they get overwhelmed with just academics. It's important to find your footing, right? Get acquainted to everything and then figure out. But at the same time, if you go to a place, whether unfortunately online for some of you or hopefully in person very soon, taking advantage of the diversity, seeking out opportunities that are not just presented to you, but exist because of the resources is so key. When you enter the community, try your best to take advantage of the people that exist. I see too many students from India coming in and they find comfort in hanging out just with other Indian students. I get it, right? Because you want to feel ghar ka, that feeling.
Familiarity. Yeah.
Familiarity, it's important to have that, but also push yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone because the exposure is so worth it.
Right. And I think the last big question I wanted to ask is, looking back, is a Harvard degree worth it? Was it worth all the work you put in high school? The experience, what makes a Harvard degree different from, either staying in India or going to a different college in the US?
I think from an external point of view, of course, brand name matters to some degree, right?
Hmm.
It provides you a safety net whereby today, after graduating, I am not recruiting for jobs or I'm not, in a job. And I knew this going in that I wanted to be self-employed. And knowing the reason that I had that assurance is because I knew that a Harvard degree would provide me the safety net of being able to open a door. It doesn't last for very long, but 4 or 5 years after graduation, if I apply to a job and I have a resume that says Harvard and somebody else has a resume that might not have a college that people know the name of, they might pay attention to this resume just because of the name. So the name does add a little bit of brand value and factor. That's, a fact. But beyond that, the inner experience truly is the exposure, the diversity, and the people. And so, I actually think it's very smart, Shaurya, that you didn't enter immediately because of the circumstances, so that you have the opportunity to start afresh and to expose yourself, like you said, to socioeconomic, just very different stories and very different backgrounds, right? Even if you think about socioeconomic classes across the world, they have very different experiences from each other. And
Exactly.
so making sure that you have that exposure to your peers, to your professors, is is phenomenal. And institutions like Harvard and Stanford, they have some of the best resources in the world. You want a book from anywhere in the world, they will get it for you. It's insane when you think about it. And so being in awe and gratitude of that is important, and taking advantage of it because it's at your fingertips.
I think exposure is the biggest reason, and the fact that all of these students are like you in the sense that they do want to achieve some sense of higher impact, and really in some small way change the world. And I genuinely believe that about most of the students going into colleges like Harvard. And I think just being in that community, that spirit is infectious. Like, it's going to stay with you. Like, I remember I went just for a summer program to the University of Pennsylvania, and it was an entrepreneurship summer program, and it was really prestigious. And the students I met over there, the feeling it left me with, when I came back to Gurgaon for 2 weeks, I was just thinking about how can I take my company to the next level. It left you with that desire to do something more.
And one thing that I loved is, I don't know if you felt this way, Shaurya, but in high school, everyone is competitive because your destination is similar. You're all applying to college, regardless of where you are. And especially if you're applying abroad, a lot of people are often in competition with one another. So it can get a little bit, toxic, for lack of a better word.
Right.
But in college, you have people who are often equally, if not more ambitious than you are, but they're all interested in different things. So I loved being surrounded by people who were super ambitious about astrophysics. We weren't in direct competition with one another, but our own ambitions could push each other and fuel each other. And there's people with a variety of interests, and even if you're in the same field, the jobs you might want later on are different, right? Because you're setting yourself up for life, not necessarily for this one outcome. So to me, like you were saying, just being surrounded by that energy makes a huge, huge, huge difference, because it makes you feel like you can elevate yourself.
Yeah. And I think the most important point about what you said is the people you choose to surround yourself by. I mean, in classes, you might get exposed to new students, but that community factor is something you create for yourself. You can either be surrounded by people you're comfortable with and are familiar with, and whether they're Indian. I know this is a thing because if I go to a summer program, there's always this group of Indians or individuals from in different countries who just they cluster towards each other because it's evolutionary. Like, you want to go towards things you're familiar to, people you're familiar with. But at the end of the day, if you want to be exposed to new experiences, you want to have the ability to make new relationships and really like deliver new opportunities to yourself, you have to be a little uncomfortable. You have to expose yourself to the unfamiliar. And the worst someone can say is no if you ask for something, whether you're in high school, whether you're in college. Like, it really doesn't affect you more than that.
Shaurya, I can't tell you how happy it makes me to hear you say these things, because I would say the same things to myself or to other people when I was your age. You understand what I'm saying? So,
Yeah. And
it's
the
so
beauty
lovely.
of YouTube is we can now project these opinions to thousands of people.
Yeah, exactly.
And hopefully they can judge them worthy or not worthy of giving it attention.
Just to add on to what you were saying about the comfort zone and pushing yourself out, I do want to clarify, because I know a lot of people are scared to make friends who are different from you, or to push yourself out doesn't mean you have to change yourself. It doesn't mean
That's
you have
so
to
true.
change your accent, for example. I sound like this because, as Shaurya said, I've lived half my life, like my childhood was in the US. But however you want to sound, that's your choice. And know that you don't have to change to get the approval of somebody else. You don't have to change the way you dress, the way you talk about things. There is value in diversity and celebrating who you are. And so I would just encourage you, push yourself out of your comfort zone, but don't change who you are in the process.
That's so great. And to end the entire interview, Avanti, I think this has been absolutely insane for me as well. Just hearing from someone who's gone through college. What's one piece of advice you'd give, either prospective applicants or college students who are watching this, or just anyone who's looking at Harvard?
One piece of advice to anybody applying, I would say, if you're applying, invest time in knowing what your story is and learning how to tell that, because that is what's going to make a difference in your application. There's people who do brilliant things, but if they don't know how to present themselves, as Shaurya was saying, there's an expectation by these colleges to present yourselves in a certain way, right? Or to be able to at least talk about and feeling like you have a conviction to make a difference. So invest time in that. Invest time in the thinking. A lot of people think, okay, I have to do whatever, but a lot of it is truly introspection and thinking. So invest time in that. I would also say, I know Shaurya released a video on this recently, but if you're somebody who's considering a gap year, also truly consider that. There are ample opportunities. And I think both Shaurya and I were similar in the fact that we got into college and then took a gap year, which does relieve a lot of stress and
It
burden.
does. Yeah.
Because you truly have that stopgap and can figure out. And if I'm being honest with all of you, I took the gap year to do this play and to do these things in music and global health and all of that. And I can present to you a picture of it. But also, I was feeling a little burnt out after school, and I needed that break, and I needed that time to center myself and my priorities. So don't listen to the voice in your head if you need that, whether that's a week, a day, a month, a year, and figure out opportunities to sustain that, because your mental health truly matters, especially during a crazy time like this.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this, Avanti. I hope this is super helpful for everybody watching. For everybody who's curious, Avanti has a YouTube channel. It's in the description. I'm sure all of you have seen it, but please subscribe. And yeah, I hope this conversation has helped you. If you have any questions, put it down below, and maybe in the future I could be on Avanti's channel and we could answer those questions. But I love how this is not an interview and more of a discussion.
Truly, I mean, this was. I feel like if we were in Mumbai or Gurgaon, we would just be hanging out, maybe
Exactly.
drinking chai and just answering
Definitely.
questions. I love it. And I mean, for all of you watching, you're probably watching because you already subscribed to Shaurya, but if you don't, make sure you subscribe, like, share, hit the
This
bell
is
button, everything.
the benefit of interviewing a YouTuber. She knows what the priorities are.
Exactly.
But thank you so much. This was really great.